What is up, hotties? Welcome back to another episode of Stay Hot. I'm Blaiden Kirk, joined as always by my two favorite co-hosts of all time, Matthew Sponauer and Theo Ash. And today we are giving our official NFL playoff predictions. I feel like just yesterday I was saying we are giving our full regular season prediction. And now here we are, 18 weeks later, predicting the playoffs. But before we get into that, Theo, I would like to congratulate you on being the first of us to win 2 Stay Hot Lock championships.
Thank you.
It's been a good season. You started off behind. You made a great comeback, and then you expanded upon your lead, and you left us in the dust. So congratulations, and I will hope to tie you next year.
I credit taking a lot of teams and making some big swings, and then also my late year Goldilocks strategy of picking second in the draft order. Those are the things. And Jesus Christ, the 3 things that guided me to this Stay Hot Locks victory.
So true.
I credit luck and the general unfair arc of the universe.
The general unfair arc towards you?
Towards Theo Ash, apparently. The arc of the universe is long and bends towards Theo Ash.
Apparently not. Apparently not, because, well, let's talk about how I'm doing first. Okay. Because some interesting things have happened to me.
Okay.
I've been on the news a lot recently, like the local news, because my girlfriend is a producer at one of the stations. And so I kind of get first dibs on like being an interviewed guest. So the first time I was on, they came to talk to me about surviving neurovirus and what it was like. And I talked about how sick I was and how it ripped through a group of us. And yeah, just talk to the news about that because that's kind of breaking out right now. It got picked up. That story got picked up by like some national like coverage person. It got picked up by like News Nation or something. And so it aired nationally. So I started getting a bunch of like comments in my TikTok, and like my parents texted me saying like, why are you in this article on like the quad-demic? I don't know how it rose exactly from just Denver local news to getting picked up by national stations, but my name is published in like The Hill, just saying I threw up a lot.
Real.
Like that's the quote. I threw up. It's some San Francisco guy commented like congratulations on your feature in our like local station website because they picked up the neurovirus story and used my quote. And then today I just got interviewed a couple hours ago because I left my house to go to a coffee shop, and as I was walking down I saw this guy pick up a rock and smash a bunch of car windows, and then like people were yelling at him and he just walked away. Like he sauntered away up down the middle of the road. And then I texted Cammie and was like, some homeless dude just broke a bunch of car windows on 10th Street. And like, yeah, she sent the news reporters out to me and they talked to me about what happened.
Okay, so, well, I've looked up Theo Ash sick on Google and it's come up. It hit very suddenly in the middle of the night. I had to go throw up, said Theo Ash, who recovered from norovirus. But then it would just keep coming up and coming back and coming back, and I couldn't hold anything down.
I couldn't.
It did rip through a group of us. I got it from my girlfriend, who got it from work. Tragic.
That is exact. It is no joke of a disease. Like the fact that that's going around again this winter is terrifying to me because I was just nauseous for 3 days, like nonstop. It was horrible. So do not get this disease. And if you do, be prepared for a bad time. And, where are you reading that article?
I'm reading it on The Hill. Are mask mandates making a comeback?
They should, man. Anybody who opposes the mask mandates has not had neurovirus. Like Dr. Fauci, I don't think he made that one. Like if you think COVID is fake, okay, I get it. You know, that's fine. But neurovirus, there's no pipeline you can fall down to think that's not real. Like it's very real. So masking up, not a bad idea in this day and age.
Real.
A lot of people do it.
That's a whole tangent.
Do we want to get into some football?
Matt, how are you doing? We got to hear about your day.
I'm fine. No, dude, nobody cares. They're tapping. The listeners have their arm.
Matt, I won't put up with this. I care. Okay.
Yeah, but I honestly, the whole point of the podcast is the listener, and I close my eyes and I see the mental image of them with their arms crossed, their earbuds in, and tapping their foot impatiently, waiting for us to talk about the playoffs.
Matt,
and I just don't have anything to report.
Have you read the comment in our YouTube recently?
No.
I would say about
I usually go read them.
Of them are masterclass.
And that's awfully sweet. But honestly, the reason why I always get scared to read them is because every time it's like, you haven't talked about blank team in 1 million years because you hate me. And it's like, God damn it, dude. And it's something we haven't talked about in ages, but
they always have a point.
Saying.
They're
they do
right,
have a point. They do have a point. But I'm just saying, to assume that they don't care about you, I think is wrong.
All right, I'm locking in on this comment section then. That's my fault. But do we want to get into football?
Yeah. Okay, we're only going to talk about.
Hold on. What do you
14
what do you
teams here for a while? Well, there's going to be a lot of fan bases who are upset at us for not talking about them because we're only going to talk about 14 teams for a while.
I don't think that's necessarily true because we'll talk about. I think it'll be a pretty even split between, like playoff teams and then draft talk.
That's
in some caliber. So the teams that are going to get left out are going to be like
the ones in the middle,
11 through 18. Yeah, those are going to be the teams that get left out.
Seahawks fans, you may not hear from us in a while, but it's okay.
But we'll talk about the playoffs here. We're going to focus on the wild card games first, go in depth on some of those or all of those, and then we will go through our whole bracket. Each of us kind of have a bracket filled out here for how we think the playoffs are going to go. Let's start with the AFC. I've seen a lot of talk about the Texans and Chargers game. I've seen a lot of people say this is a coin flip. Nico tweeted out yesterday about, he said, give me a reason to pick either team because right now I'm torn. I'm going to be real with you. I'm not torn. I think this is a very easy Chargers pick. I don't know how you two feel about it, but I think it's I'm leaning very easily for the Chargers.
What's the path to victory here for the Texans? It's a Stroud masterclass, right? I don't really trust the Texans to run the ball super effectively. I think against defenses that were in the top half of like EPA per play against the run, they've only averaged 3.8 yards a carry this year. It's pretty weak. Mm-hmm. Their strength on defense, I don't think plays well into the Chargers where they have these two great edge rushers. It's not to say that they're not going to get theirs, but if any team can deal with that, it's a team that's got great bookend tackles. Yeah. And I feel like the way that they were going to go and be a real threat in this playoff run is that they're going to have CJ Stroud and this great receiving unit. But the offensive line has been such a disaster that it's really nullified a lot of that. And then additionally, you're down two of your three great receivers. Now, I think, when we're talking about like a playoff football game, anything can happen. The spread on this game is probably less than a touchdown. I haven't looked at it, but I can't imagine it'd be all that much. So, I don't think the Texans are out of it, but I think I like the Chargers' chances of shutting things down for Houston a little bit more than I like Houston's chances of really being able to go out there and do their thing against a Chargers defense that's been fantastic this year. It just doesn't help that the other side also has, a great quarterback, even if there is some limitations that offense has just because their weapons aren't great. The Texans honestly are dealing with that as well too. So right now I like this Chargers team. Yeah,
Blaiden, until the Texans can stop a stunt, I'm picking the Chargers. Derwin James might have 3 sacks in this game. I feel like it's just killed the Texans offense all year. It has not been a good unit. It is the worst in the playoffs statistically. There is a lot wrong with it. And I'm not, like you said, Matt, 2 bookend tackles for the Chargers to kind of take away the biggest strength for the Texans defense. I mean, unless they follow Ladd around with Stingley and like press him the entire game, which just doesn't really seem like your typical D'Amico Ryan strategy.
Even because they move Ladd around so much.
Yeah, he's in the slot. He's motioning. Yeah, you're not going to be able to do that in any game. Is just press him all game.
Right.
I would probably encourage the Texans to do that as much as they possibly could, but I just don't know if there'll be enough of it for the defense to overcome what has really been a woeful offensive experience for Texas fans all year.
Yeah. I just don't think you can go into the playoffs with as big of a negative as their offensive line and expect to.
I 100% agree. It's the weakest pure unit in the playoffs.
Right. It's gotta be. I'm trying not to write them off too much based off of one weakness, but it's really hard not to. It's a disaster.
Yeah, and J.K. Dobbins is back, isn't he? The Chargers' rush offense has been pretty good since he's been in. I mean, the Chargers' offense isn't exactly a powerhouse either. If the Texans' offensive line is the worst unit, like where is the Chargers' receivers? Like next, I like Ladd, but like next worst. What if they double him?
Ladd is saving them here.
He is. And they do have Greg Roman.
Overall hasn't been bad. It's since week 12. I mean, it's above average.
Mm-hmm. I agree. It has not been nearly the pits of hell like Bobby Slowick experience.
and that's the other thing, right? I mean, if we just go like unit by unit, right? We're like quarterback Chargers, offensive line Chargers, running game Chargers, coaching Chargers. I mean, would you say the defense? I'm seeing the Chargers have a better defense by EPA since week 12, or maybe I don't have that.
They've been pretty good. I mean, I like the Chargers defense. I like Khalil Mack. I like their DTs like Puna Ford. Deion Henley's been a bit of a revelation. They just kind of play that umbrella and close on stuff well. Like Tarheeb Still has been so great this year. Like he'll bait you in zone. Like they've got some nice players, but I do like the Texans defense more. Their havoc rate is so high. I'll counter that stat with havoc. They get so many PBUs, interceptions, sacks. Like you can stunt Will Anderson inside over a guard. I'm sure we'll see a lot of that in this game to avoid the tackles and cause some major problems. They've got just some really high-end player, like Stingley's ball skills we've talked about all year. So I do think that this one could be close in maybe a low-scoring way, and maybe the Texans are just never quite out of it, and who knows what can happen. Maybe Stroud does just go crazy on like third down. He's been known to do it, but I do think that the Chargers are clearly the safer team to pick. I think if we were to simulate this, the Chargers.
Yeah, I mean, if you got into fourth quarter or even overtime and like game-winning drive, I would not want to be behind the Texans' offensive line. That's it. Like need to have a situation. They just have too big of a flaw.
Yeah, I think so too. I think they're an outlier with how many negative plays they take. And I just think it's too big of a flaw. I don't think the Chargers have a flaw like that.
Against a good Chargers defense. This is all to say that
Patrick too.
Yeah. I mean, this is all to say that, there's no excuses for Herbert.
That's true. I mean, we'll see what happens. Quentin Johnston could be an excuse. He's kind of a walking excuse.
If they don't win this game, Herbert is not a winner forever, and he doesn't have the it factor needed to win, and I would have to trade him away. I would.
He'll go to the Saints like Drew Brees. Drew Brees didn't win a playoff game. Well, he did. He won one playoff game on his 31st birthday, and then he woke up that day, and everything was about to change because I think the playoff run started on his 31st birthday.
Real. That's so tragic, too.
He only won 9 playoff games his entire career.
There's just not that many playoff games to go around.
That was just so low to me.
There's not that many wins, especially. I mean, even in that era, there were 2 less games on top of that. True. So
it's so hard, man. I think about, I was going through looking for Lamar Hope Core, where he examples of a quarterback struggling in the playoffs until they're like 27 or whatever. There are a few examples, but it just reminded me looking through all that data of like how good of a playoff performer you have to be to actually have a reputation. Like it's just Mahomes and it's just Brady. Like Rodgers has a reputation as like a horrible playoff performer. He is like the next best after those guys. Like seriously, like he is that good. He has a ring, but it just doesn't.
He does have a ring.
It just doesn't
Not
matter.
many can say that.
But anyway,
let's move on to Ravens Steelers. My girlfriend is a Steelers fan, and she keeps asking me, are the Steelers going to win this weekend? And I keep telling her, you're playing in Baltimore. What do you think? And she just gives me this look, and she knows, and everyone should know, that the Ravens are going to get it done. Lamar isn't known as a great playoff performer, but he has been on an absolute tear recently. And I know it's been the regular season, but it's not like they're getting a break. It's just a continuation. That's what we're going to tell him. It's a continuation of the regular season. Just keep playing how you've been playing. On top of that, the Steelers' offense has been struggling. They're really starting to. We talk about it every week. The problem with the Steelers' offense. So I won't go on that tangent. But one thing that I have noticed about the Ravens is, and I keep bringing up since week 12, they are the best defense in the NFL by EPA and success rate. They have seriously turned it around. Not just like getting out of being below average. They are playing at an extremely high level right now.
If I was a team with a weak link corner and I was led up front, boy, I'd hate to see the Steelers coming. But unfortunately, that is just not the case with the Baltimore Ravens defense with Humphrey and Wiggins and like Michael Pierce and Travis Jones and stuff.
Yeah, they're just too good.
Yeah, I mean, the path to victory here is a tough, or for the Steelers, is it like a tough Lamar game? I mean, the Steelers did beat the Ravens in the regular season, but what did that take? Multiple fumbles, an interception, multiple missed field goals, and you win by 2. You need a lot of the around the margin, not even around the margins, but like the high variance, big break plays to go your way if you're the Steelers. You need to play a lot of ball control. You need to limit possessions. I mean, we know what Pittsburgh's path is, but they already have gotten that once, and unless you're picking that to happen, I mean, this is probably the highest spread. I don't really care that much about the spread, but it's probably like the heaviest favorite game, I'll say.
It's gotta be. It's 9.5. I actually know this.
Yeah, so I mean, that's pretty big for a playoff game. I don't want to count out any team in the playoffs, but Pittsburgh's going to have to hit some like big time explosives. It can't be what it is. And honestly, it's just so tough because with the Ravens defense playing so good recently and the Steelers offense playing its worst football coming into this game, like it's hard not to say this is like the worst case scenario for the Steelers. And with the Steelers offense not only being bad, but just so limited, it's tough to know what exactly Pittsburgh's going to be able to throw at the Ravens to really catch them off guard. I mean, Russ struggles to throw over the middle of the field. The run game is only so-so. Picking stuff down the sideline is dope, but like it's only can do so much. Although I say that, and then he goes for $1 billion or whatever, but still.
Nate Wiggins not letting that happen.
Nate Wiggins not letting it happen. Marlowe's been playing well, like.
Maybe. I've seen
people pushing the Marlon Humphrey Defensive Player of the Year campaign.
I don't think he's been better than Surtain, so.
No chance.
I think the key to this game and every game against the Ravens defense is to drop back really as much as possible and test their pass rush. That, to me, is the thing that has struggled the most this year. Is just getting home. Odafe Owe, Michael Pierce, Travis Jones, Kyle Van Noy. These are useful players that have watched a lot of tape. They've been around a long time. Like, they have caused havoc in the run game all year. But there's not a lot of pure one-on-one pass rush winners there. So I think if you're the Steelers, I would try to drop back and hold as much as I can. Matabike is probably cooking us, though. And, but I just don't think I can expect victory sitting back and throwing into a run blitz or running into a run blitz the whole game, which is what they're going to do, and it's what we're going to see, and it's probably just not going to be efficient enough to beat the Ravens offense. Like that's probably what's going to happen here. Maybe Freiermuth like goes crazy or something like that. That's probably who I'd try to run the offense through more, is him, rather than Pickens on the boundary.
See that.
And I just don't think it's very and Lamar will see the same thing. Him and Derrick Henry, you're going to see a lot of blitzes. Mm-hmm. In the past, that's something that Lamar has not been good at, but he's the best in the league at it this year, beating the blitz. He'll just run backwards. He'll outrun your blitzers, and then he's held it for 5 seconds, and there's only 5 people covering downfield. That's why the Ravens receivers have the most separation, by the way, is like that exact scenario happening.
Oh, you saw that
a million times
too?
This year. Yes, it's a funny graphic to me that the Ravens are such a big outlier. And then people, instead of thinking like,
just because Lamar buys a lot of time and doesn't throw it until he has an open receiver.
I truly, like, way too many people are looking at that graphic and saying like, wow, the Ravens have the best wide receivers in the league. I don't know if that's
receiver separation is one of those stats where like it's fine. It's an objective stat for what it is, but we'd be better off without it. And the conclusions that people come away from that, the data analysis from Twitter on what that means is never been fantastic.
No, it just separation versus man I can maybe see, but like when zone coverage gets involved, like what is...
Well, how is that counted? Is that counted from when the ball is caught, or just like...
It's a very good question, because there's a lot of times that
I guess
you can
it
count
isn't
separation.
that objective, because you could count that all the time. I don't know. Honestly, I know they do the player tracking. Well, I'm not going to doubt it too much. Mm-hmm. I was going to go on the yards over expected rant for the gazillionth time, and how I think separation's better than that, but I don't.
I think separation is a fine metric to know, but like you said, Matt, drawing conclusions of like these are the best route runners in the league.
You have to know what
based
their
off
game is as well too. You know, I mean, depending on what types of routes you're running, it's wildly
the separation leaders every year are tight ends, like because they catch checkdowns and like no one's around them, like, and they qualify for the targets things on like running backs. So
George Pickens and Mike Evans are going to have some of the lowest separation numbers in football every year because they run go routes all the time.
Exactly. Like you can be open on a go route with an inch of separation. Like that's kind of what you're looking for. If you're sitting down over the quarterback, like you better have 5 yards of separation. But I digress. The key with Lamar, they're going to blitz him, and either he makes plays or he doesn't. And
Patrick Queen just remembers all of Lamar's ticks, and he's gonna wreck the game single-handedly.
Ticks he forgot last time.
He was saving them for the playoffs. But
good. Yeah, that's
good.
Smart of him.
Very smart, very wise. But let's move on to Bills and Broncos. Josh Allen versus Bo Nix. Should be the battle of the ages, right, Theo?
There's some things about this matchup that are exciting.
Yeah.
And then I remember that it's Josh Allen versus Bo Nix. I'm like, I don't know.
Give it to us.
Well, like what?
Well, here's what I think the game might look like.
Okay.
I think the game might look like a lot of Broncos games this year, where they keep a lot of extra pass protectors in, and they don't get that many people into the route, and it ends up with Bo Nix throwing a check down. And there's a lot of check downs in the game, and McDermott doesn't really blitz, and Bo Nix tries to beat Josh Allen throwing like 4 air yards down the field at a time. That is my vision on how this game goes. Like maybe not a ton of mistakes, maybe even a couple big plays. Like if they get sick of the checkdowns, or maybe if they work, like maybe if Marvin Mims breaks a couple, maybe you could soften them up with some goes, some big plays. We've seen that from Knicks this year, or maybe just play action works just one time. They can strike pretty quickly. But I think the goal with Knicks should be to get him to throw to the intermediate level as much as possible. Just put depth in everything and just see what he can do there, because he has the highest interception rate on intermediate throws that there is in the league. And he just doesn't hit many passes in that area. It's a lot of deep bombs or checkdowns. Mm-hmm. So I think just put some play zone, make him decipher it, and if he kills you with big plays while you do that, or if their run game outpaces Josh Allen, like that's a damn shame. But that's how I would play it, and I expect that to work.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to get me to pick against Allen in this one and what they've been doing, and the Bills' defense has really been pretty great as of recent. So I think the Broncos are, I mean, they're kind of a lot like the Steelers. I view them as a little bit more of a threat because I think Knicks is a little bit more dynamic than Wilson at this point. So while they're doing a lot of the same stuff where it's a lot of checkdowns and stuff down the sideline and it's not as much over the middle of the field, I like the Broncos running game more. And I think Knicks does a better job of maybe extending some plays and using some athleticism. And we've seen him like hit some of these big throws and be close in tough games. I mean, you know, he went, not that this is really comparable to the Bills, but like they battled the Bengals very formidably. They battled the Chargers very formidably.
The Chiefs came down to a block
right there.
The Chiefs came down to a blocked field goal, and that game was a lot of stuff underneath, like to the sideline where defenses will give you, but there was also one just absolute lightning strike to Cortland Sutton that he beat McDuffie just at one time, and the defense played good enough to keep the Chiefs low scoring, and they were almost able to win that game. So that's your path for the Broncos to beat good teams, is like checkdowns can potentially mean not turnovers. Like the Broncos have gotten big plays throwing underneath a lot this year to whoever. And they've gotten also a lot of big plays to Cortland Sutton in contested catch situations. So I see the vision on this being a close game. But I think just over the course of 4 quarters, Josh Allen is probably going to make a lot of plays. And the way things have been going this year, not turn the ball over. And I just think offense this good a lot of times beats defense this good. And the Broncos have some weak links at corner. And that might be all it takes for Allen to put up points.
And look, I've said this before, like as good as the Broncos defense is, they have struggled against a few teams this year where they've had to like play good offenses. The Bengals, the Chargers, the Ravens all let up over 30 points in those games. It is definitely concerning that, like, yes, they have a good defense, but they've played like the Jets and the Raiders and the Saints and like early on Panthers, Falcons, Raiders again, Browns, Colts, like, and then the week 18 Chiefs, where they literally weren't trying. So I do kind of think the Bills are going to run away with this one.
I think the Broncos can be in a battle here. I just view Denver as like, they're kind of like the Steelers, except they're happy to be here and they're a more formidable version of it. You know what I mean? Like this, it's found money to be in the playoffs if you're the Broncos, regardless. Like it's a good thing. Like you've already won basically going into this game. Pittsburgh, it's pressure. You know, it's Armageddon. It's Armageddon over there.
So they're upset to be here. Right?
The Batman scene is going to come to life if they lose.
Right. That's exactly what I'm thinking. So
here's an interesting stat, Blaiden. The Broncos are number 1 in variance for DVOA each week.
Interesting.
So week to week performance, it's not so good. Now they're 4th overall in DVOA, which takes strength of schedule into account.
Yeah.
I mean, they lead the league in sacks. They've had a ton of pick sixes. Like Surtain's completely locked down. But as you said, they've had some stinker performances, and statistically, they are the most, like, we don't know what we're going to get of any team in the league, which makes this kind of hard to predict how the Bills offense will do. I mean,
that's why I don't think it's fair to write them off. Now, like, you look at it and you're like, okay, I think Allen is going to go out there with how he's been playing recently, and no matter what they throw at him, he can go and make the play and get it done. But a football game is a football game. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, you don't walk into any NFL game pretty much. It is. You walk. Sorry. There's going to be like 8 possessions for each team this game or something like that. You know, it's not going to be. It's not going to be. You know, you walk in there and whatever happens, was the inevitable outcome. So I think Denver has a solid shot, and I think Denver's happy to be here. So
yeah, I can see Denver showing up. It
would be crazy though.
I have my doubts about Knicks winning and avoiding mistakes and winning the shootout that it could very possibly be. But I do see the path. So, and the Bills defense, they're in the 0th percentile points allowed per drive versus playoff teams this year. There's only been 5 games where they've seen a playoff team. That's pretty low. Against the Rams, they allowed like 48 points. Against Stafford played one of the greatest quarterbacks games I've ever seen in that game. Like, that's not like a usual thing. And then in a small sample size, I can see how that wonks it up. Like, just one amazing game from Stafford.
They did play like 2 back-to-back shootouts where they had the highest point total of the season combined in those games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then they played the Lions and they won that one.
And then they played the Lions, and that one got out of hand where they were scoring so much early that. So I don't know I think the Bills defense will be good in this game. We'll see if, as the degree of difficulty gets higher, if the dam breaks for them or not, just based on their performance in some games. But I don't think it'll happen in this game.
But also,
I think it'll be closer than Ravens Steelers.
Stafford are better than Knicks.
It's true.
Predicting final scores is a tough one. And
I'm just trying to think if it'll be like a good game or not. Like I'm flip-flopping on it.
Well, here's the problem. Here's the issue is that, I think Denver has a path to victory here, but it's like this very like ball control. We don't make mistakes, and the Bills defense can't quite like force the big variance player too that it needs. And we force, Allen to just make a couple of bad tweaks, and we just don't let him like get the ball back. Like you can
sound
see
like Ryan Day right now.
You can see that. Do I?
Just don't make the big mistake. We just have to play not to lose.
Well, ball control can work if you're good at it.
Yeah, ball control can work if you don't also throw a red zone pick 6 or something.
That's true.
But at the same time, Allen, can just have, one of his first round games. He's one of the all-time great playoff performers statistically. And if he went out there and just said, sorry, I'm too good, and the game got away from the Broncos and all of a sudden they were playing down from behind, there's a lot of variance in the final score of this one. I agree. So
have you seen
the Bills win?
Yes, the Bills win. Yeah. On ESPN, there's they have their bracket challenge right now, and the tiebreaker is to guess how many total points will be scored in the playoffs.
That seems pretty easy, doesn't it? You should just Google the amount of points scored in the regular season.
That's just
maybe in the last couple
game.
Yeah, and then just guess that. Or maybe
I multiply it by 13, which is the number of games, which is 298.
I feel like, and then maybe make some adjustment, like some small adjustment. Like, I think the offenses are probably better than the defenses in this particular playoffs. I guess I don't know.
And we could skew maybe a little bit higher for the fact that it's good teams. But
yeah. How do you guys have the rest of the AFC bracket sorted out? So we all are pretty unanimous here with our picks in the first round, which would make the second round of the bracket in the AFC KC versus the Chargers, and then Baltimore versus Buffalo.
I have the Chiefs and Ravens meeting in the AFC Championship game.
I also have the Chiefs and Ravens.
Oh, Matt, you have to pick something different now.
I have Chiefs Bills.
There we go.
There you go.
Let me make the case for Baltimore here.
Okay.
The more I look at stats, and this is probably how I should know that I'm wrong, but the more I look at stats, I become more convinced that they're like a Golden State level force. I mean, the amount of positives that they have and the conflicts that they can put you in with Lamar and Derrick Henry is truly like unmatched, unheard of. They're the best passing attack. They're like the best run game. They've done it against the hardest schedule. A stat that radicalized me was looking at how these teams have performed versus the other playoff teams and realizing the Ravens have played the most games against playoff teams. They have the best offense from a points per drive perspective against them, and the best defense from a points per drive perspective against all of these playoff teams. And they're battle tested, and they have so many stars playing well. Like, just if we're counting the good players like Henry, Lamar, like Linderbaum, Stanley, Andrews, like the KC has Kelsey, but they don't have other stars like that to complement. Like, Buffalo has a lot of good players, but I don't know. I do think that it's true that they don't quite have other stars to complement like Lamar does, which is a valid point in the Allen MVP case, although I don't think it should win it. I do have Lamar because of all the conflict, like I said.
Yeah.
And the thing that the Ravens really struggle with, Tucker has been so bad and so unreliable, and it was so clear during the Eagles game, like, man, this is really going to cost them a playoff game. And then they've shot themselves in the foot with penalties more than anybody else as well. And then there's obviously the scary history of Lamar in the playoffs, which is legitimately not good so far. All right, this isn't a Rodgers situation where his numbers are nice and he has a bad reputation. Lamar has not been consistent so far. So I see the pros and cons, but I think just based on what I've seen this year and how it went head to head the first time, Baltimore would beat Buffalo.
I agree.
I don't hate the argument. I think that, I don't know. I'm just trusting the Bills here as a little bit more of a proven playoff team. I won't lie. Like, last year it felt like the Ravens were superstars and it kind of came crashing down, you know? I just don't feel like that's for no reason, but I think the Ravens are a perfectly fine pick. It's going to be a brutal game, but I trust Allen a little bit more in the playoffs right now. I do. That's the truth. And I think that their offense, when needed to be, has been a buzzsaw as well against good teams.
True.
You know?
Chiefs.
Yep.
Lions.
I will say, my hot take would be that this year's Ravens are better than last year's Ravens. If we're talking about their defense is playing at an extremely high level right now ever since they moved Hamilton back to safety. They have just been absolutely flawless, it seems. I don't know how in the world that was their main problem, but I guess Marcus Williams was really just not playing well.
He was rough. He was really rough.
So
Wiggins getting just older, I think, helps too. More experienced.
Yeah, that helps a lot. And then their offense has been better this year. With the addition of Derrick Henry has just completely changed everything they do off. I mean, not changed. It just makes it better. Their rushing attack, Theo, like you said, is probably the best in football. Their passing attack is arguably the best in football. There's nothing that they really can't beat you with right now. I think if they had a situation where they went into a game like last year against Kansas City and couldn't get it done because, the receivers or maybe Lamar, now you have the option to lean on Derrick Henry, an option that you didn't really have last year.
Yeah.
So I think that addition does make them more dangerous.
I don't know. I think I look at Buffalo. I feel like they've defensively improved a lot since the first time that they played the Ravens. And I don't think Baltimore is some perfect, unstoppable team. What do you like about the offense outside of Lamar and Derrick Henry?
Mark Andrews, a lot.
Yeah.
Andrews, Flowers, if he's healthy. Hopefully
Flowers
he would be by
banged
this
up.
point.
Flowers, this is not some. I don't know if I necessarily agree that this Ravens team is wildly better than last year's.
Not wild.
I think the addition of Derrick Henry makes it very different. Last year they got to this point, and what happened? They handed it off 6 times total in the game. Yeah, Gus Edwards had 3 carries for 20 yards. That was the next leading runner after Lamar Jackson, and Flowers fumbled on the 1, and it was still a 1-score game. I just think that adding this kind of counter punch is so huge. And Andrews in that game, he played, but he was returning from a bad injury, and it's not like it is right now. Andrews is just a completely different level player. So I think the receiving core is substantial, added a superstar level juice, and the running game added a superstar level juice. I couldn't
disagree with what superstar. No, they did not add a superstar. Andrews is not a superstar. No.
The way Andrews is playing now versus the way it was in the playoff game last year, dude, Andrews has been so good.
A superstar.
So. What tight end is a superstar then? He's been so good. Maybe not superstar.
Is Mark Andrews unforgettable?
How about this? You added Derrick Henry, he's a superstar, and then a Pro Bowl level player. That's underrating Andrews, but you still should get a sense of the level of gravity that it provides to the receiving. Sure, whatever. I don't care. He's playing at an elite level right now for a tight end. So those two things make me think man, this Ravens team, it's going to be different. But maybe not. Maybe Lamar gets blitzed.
It could be. It wouldn't shock me if it was. I like Buffalo a little more, but at the same time,
Ravens beating themselves, that's my problem with them. I don't think if they had no penalties and Tucker made all of his kicks, I think they would steamroll, but that's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, I guess you can overrate the beating themselves stuff, though. It can be done. To an extent, you beat yourself until you don't. You beat the Bills soundly. Now, I think the Bills are a different team than early in the year, just like I think the Ravens are a different team than they were early in the year. But if you saw a repeat, you'd have to point back and say, look, we already saw that this year. It's not that crazy. And Buffalo's had bad defensive performances. It would surprise me if they're able to just totally shut down Baltimore, unless they did it to themselves. So I can get behind maybe it not being the, I don't know, the best pick just to say, well, these stars are going to play bad. I don't even really believe that. I just think that game's going to be a shootout. Mm-hmm. And I like Buffalo,
that's
but
fair.
No, I think that's okay. And I think there's another big advantage that the Bills have, I think, and that's their pass rush is all Greg Rousseau is a better one-on-one pass rush winner on Roger Rosengarten than anybody is on the Ravens. Maybe Matabike, maybe he could do it, but it's so easy to double those defensive tackles. I just don't love their pass rush compared to a lot of the other teams in this playoff.
Rosengarten has a Myles Garrett jersey, so
Rosengarten is good. He's had a good rookie season for sure, but isn't he a little short? And Rousseau's just so he'd get him a few times. I feel in a way that I don't know.
Yeah, this is the thing about the Ravens. I do think they have real holes. Their pass rush isn't that good. Their offensive line really is not that crazy either. I don't view their weapons as some insane advantage. I guess in the receiving game, I think Henry is a pretty big deal. So I don't know. I can't quite view them as some flawless sort of Golden State team when on paper they have special teams problems, they have pass rush problems, they have offensive line problems.
It would be if Golden State was irreparably bad shooting free throws. I don't think that was the case with them, but that's what the Ravens are. They should be. They have these never before seen talents,
like
but they had
the
some.
2016 Cavs. The Ravens are.
Didn't they win the championship?
They did.
I guess the Ravens could.
How are they like the 2016 Cavs?
They've got LeBron, Lamar. They've got Derrick Henry, Kyrie, and
Facts.
then that's it. That's everything else. We'll say was Dellavedova on that team?
Yeah.
That's Kyle Hamilton.
That's Kyle Hamilton. Yep.
I don't know. I don't know if
You knew where I was going right away.
I mean, LeBron was a bit of a better playoff performer going in, and so are all the Golden State players. So
Yeah, that's true, but
are they the 76ers? Maybe
is Lamar MVP? Then okay, yeah, he's like LeBron.
He's
Well, I mean, look, you could go through examples of teams that are like that. I mean, call them the 76ers, but I don't think Lamar's hurt. They're kind of, I mean, look at the Buckeyes right now, as of the recording of this video, mind you, and not 2 days later when they will be put to the test once again. I don't know. I see your guys' path with the Ravens, I guess. To like them being like not dominant, but them like crushing and winning the Super Bowl. I don't view them as a perfect team, regardless of what DVOA says, but I also don't view the Bills as that. I don't think the Bills are some uniquely dominant force. And I think both those, I don't know.
It's a tough call. I'll
stick with the Bills, but it's thankless. Regardless, I have the Chiefs making the Super Bowl.
Okay. I've got Baltimore still. They were my preseason pick, and I'm just so high on them that I'm just going for it again. But the Chiefs aren't a bad pick. The Chiefs...
They aren't.
They're hitting their stride at the right time. They're hot right now.
That's scary.
My problem with them is that they just don't seem balanced enough. Like the Ravens, they don't have Derrick Henry. Their running game has not been good all year. And Mark Andrews and Kelsey seem pretty comparable to me right now. But the other wide receivers aren't as good as what the Ravens have. And like the defense hasn't performed as well. So just on paper, I am going Ravens. I'm trying not to be too superstitious or, just the Chiefs are the Chiefs
you
with
could be
it.
a little stitious.
But I am a little stitious about it. And the hardest thing to do in this sport, hypothetically, is to just march down the field a million little times. And that's exactly what the Chiefs do at like kind of the highest level ever.
They're like one of these ball control teams, but they have Patrick
But it
Mahomes.
works. Yeah.
Well, that's what's different about them is it's the rare time where it stems from the lack of the receivers rather than the lack of the quarterback as to why they play like that. And it just works great. I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I picked KC to start the year, and now they're the 1 seed and they've lost one game so far. I'm probably not going to switch off of them no matter what. I also think that I'm kind of playing the odds. I've said this before. They don't have to play both the Bills and the Ravens. They have to play one of them. Now, the Chargers 100%. Are still like a pretty good team. I don't think that's like that crazy big of a break, but they also have gone up against the Chargers twice this year, and they've come away with 2 victories, right?
100%.
Albeit both in 1-score games. So, although maybe that just means less when you're playing Kansas City, if we're being honest. I don't think they're the best version of themselves. This is a year where Allen just goes crazy and the Chiefs can't quite stop it, or this is a year where
I think the Chiefs offense is better than it was last year. I've been saying that all season, but I also think the Bills and Ravens offenses and just teams overall are better than they were last year. So the Chiefs are about the same, and I do think the Bills and Ravens have gotten more formidable. But maybe the Chiefs just, it doesn't matter. Like every year is just a little bit more impressive. Like Mahomes is a computer who just remembers how the team beat him before and then uses it against him the next time, except none of these teams even have beat him. So
where do the Chiefs rank in points per drive allowed?
It's not a great mark. Like I've said all year, the defense actually scares me more than like Mahomes is going to do his thing. I'm 100% sure, but I'm not sure where the defense ranks here, and it would take me kind of a bit to find it. It's not great. It's not as good as it was last year.
Here's the thing about Kansas City. I do believe to some extent the point you've made about like they're built to win one-score games, but like you watch and it's like they are getting lucky as well sometimes. Like, sorry, sometimes the opposing team is like missing a field goal or they're like banking one in, right?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
The question is the Chiefs unbeatable? It's an easy answer. The answer is 100% they are. Like, they could so easily take an L to the Ravens or the Bills. I mean, the Bills beat them soundly.
This year.
Like, it was a double digit. Was that even a one-score game?
No.
So, like,
no.
The Chiefs are the boogeyman, certainly, but, like, they 100% are beatable. They have gotten lucky to go 14-2.
What was it? The Raiders won a game off of... Or the Raiders lost that game because, like, the center snapped the ball early.
Yeah. 100%. And at that point, I think there was too much, like, oh, the Chiefs are like a 22 Vikings situation. Like, oh, this one-score game rate just isn't going to work for them. Like, I'm out. I thought there was a lot of that sentiment about the Chiefs at that time. And that's when it's like, okay, this is a style that can work in the playoff, and it works for them, I think, more than people give them credit for at a certain time. But at the same time, like, people have somewhat of a point that, like, yeah, it does. It's not the world's greatest way to play. It doesn't make you the most dominant team of all time, certainly. If you're not in the regular season, there's a chance you're not in the playoffs. But that was all true last year. That's also true. That was all true last year about the Chiefs. They did not rank super highly in front of them.
That's the thing. This is the thing about Kansas City. It's like the second that we're right about this, it'll be the first time, you know. And it's been said for ages, and they've already given themselves the easiest path. I think their odds are still the best, but like, damn, you guys are making some good points about Baltimore. I won't lie.
Baltimore can only beat
and
themselves.
I'd love to see it. Here's the thing. I'll give an anti-Chiefs take then. It would be good for them not to make it. Just in general. I just think it's way more interesting for Buffalo.
For the league.
For the league, literally. And here's the thing. I have nothing against Kansas City, truthfully and honestly. I like that Travis Kelce keeps racking up Super Bowl rings. It's awesome. But
it's not a legend.
Dude, like, I do think, like, a Chiefs-Eagles Super Bowl, that's worst-case scenario. Both those teams have won recently. That is less interesting.
It's been so long since a quirky team has won, I feel like. The Rams are there, dude. But every other win outside of the Rams is Brady and Mahomes. Like, there's just not a lot of middle-class quarterbacks winning rings. And the middle class includes, like, Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. You know, it's been a while since anybody.
I don't know if I count those as middle class. They're like top 1%. Middle class is like...
Sure. I just mean someone who's not like the GOAT of the sport, Brady and Mahomes. Like, it's been so much.
Someone who's not the top 0.001%. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah, I just don't like seeing teams that have gotten one recently back in the Super Bowl. It makes it less interesting. I know some people are like, you have to appreciate the three-peat is like, I don't care about the three-peat at all, dude. I don't care about it at all. I think that's like the least interesting storyline we've got going right now. It's kind of interesting that the Chiefs like kind of look wonky and are still winning, but really that's not as entertaining for me. I would love to see like Buffalo Lions. That would be, if I could pick it. Those are two teams that have been great all year, and neither team has a Super Bowl win, not only in recent history, but ever. That'd be sick.
Yeah.
That would be the most interesting.
I truly do not care who the Super Bowl is. I'd like it to be Packers somebody, but if it's not the Packers, like Chiefs, Lions, Ravens, Eagles, Bills, Buccaneers, like it. My brain is just flat hearing all of those.
And that's the honorable good NFL fan take. And I give you a lot of credit for that, but like, damn, I don't think
it's bad to want the Bills and Lions. Like, I don't think that makes me better than anybody. Like, it's about the same to me. I want to see Lamar perform well. I will say that. I definitely want to see that. And if he won the Super Bowl, maybe that's what I would prefer.
What about Herbert?
Herbert too. I love the two of them, but truly
that Chargers are obviously excluded from my don't have one yet. That would make me sick to my stomach this season.
But if like Lamar plays good and like Allen beats him and plays better, truly I do not think that.
Honestly, more than anything, one of the most frustrating things that can happen is that you can have a guy who's just a legend of the game, just as good as they can possibly be. But if they don't ever get a ring, you have to spend the rest of time being like, no, guys, please, guys. I don't want to have to do that. We've got like 4 guys in the NFL, right? Burrow, Herbert, Allen, Lamar. If one of them could get one, I'm
inherently a lazy person who wants to do less work like everybody else. And the thing I have to do the most work about is defending Lamar Jackson because his playoff record is bad. I don't have to do it for Burrow or Allen because like Allen had the game and Burrow went to the Super Bowl. If Lamar could bump himself up to even that level of like proved himself, I could go on vacation, man. So that's why I just need Lamar to boost his EPA numbers. And that's, if he makes the Super Bowl or not.
I don't care about the actual game. Just get my spreadsheets right and we're cool.
That's what I'm rooting for. I do care who wins and like who loses. But as far as like what I'm rooting for and my rooting interest, truly, I just want Lamar Jackson to play like well. If he wins or loses, I do not care. But
the only thing I care about, I do not want to see the Steelers in the Super Bowl. Anyone but them.
You're going to be all right.
I am
You're going to be fine.
I am
going to be. No. You don't understand. When the Ravens beat them, what is that going to be? This Saturday? I'm going to be like jumping up and down.
The biggest advantage that the Steelers have going for them right now is that you keep talking about it like it's a done deal. That's the only thing that's making me nervous about this. Because you're like, Lamar Jackson can't possibly fumble 3 times bizarrely. And it's like, right, I agree, but don't say it.
That's very fair.
If we were doing the Stay Hot Locks for the playoffs.
You've had Wendy's nugs dipped in sauce, but have you had them covered in sauce? Wendy's new saucy nugs take the crispy and spicy nugs you love and turn them up to 11. Choose between flavors like buffalo, honey barbecue, garlic parm, or if you're really a heat seeker, try spicy ghost pepper, only on Wendy's signature spicy nugs. I dare ya. That's 7 delicious ways to try the nugs you already love. Pick a flavor, grab some extra napkins, and prepare to nug like you've never nugged before. For a whole new way to nug, it's gotta be Wendy's at participating U.S. Wendy's locations.
We got to move on to the NFC. We have got to move on to the NFC.
We do. Let's start same order we did as we did the AFC. Rams, Vikings.
I think this will be the best game.
This could be the best game.
This will be the best game of the wild card.
I'm very excited.
I can see it.
I think you have a Vikings defense that's going to blitz a lot, right? They're going to be super aggressive. Stafford's just one of those dudes who can handle that, man. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm totally out on the Vikings, but I can see a world where Stafford goes out there and gunslings. Regardless, you have an aggressive defense and an aggressive quarterback on one side. And then on the other side, you've got Darnold, who's kind of mistake prone, but he tries to hit a bunch of big plays. And you've got a Rams defense that, you know, I think is okay. It's got a little bit of juice, but those receivers are going to be really tough to deal with. So they're going to be trying to air it out and really go at, you know, Rams secondary and whatnot. That to me lines up for a game that maybe doesn't end necessarily 40-40, but seems like it's going to have at least a lot of big plays and big moments in it and a lot of maybe turnovers or sacks or variance.
I think the Vikings don't have anybody who can really guard Puka Nacua. And the Rams don't really have anybody who can guard Justin Jefferson is another part of this. I think that kind of showed through in the last game is like Puka Nacua can line up on the boundary and run an out route and you can be running zone and that's one-on-one on Gilmore. And like that was food for him in the last game on the boundary. And I think it's just going to be food again. I think it's going to look a lot like that first game. I think that was a 10-point Rams win. I think the Vikings can be closer. They had just no pressure. I think they had 2 pressures the entire game. And I just think Flores is going to come better than that this time around.
Yep.
I just do. At the time, it was the first time they blitzed less than 30% in a game. That would begin a run of 5 weeks straight of that. Over which run they started to lock in a little bit, but they also played some bad teams, I will say. But I think this time, like, that strategy clearly didn't work. And I think this time the strategy will just be better. They'll probably blitz more and they'll probably be better for it.
Yeah, and this should be a game where both teams are really airing it out. I'm just excited for this one.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, like you say, I think Darnold can rebound. I mean, the Rams defense isn't that
That's
good.
what's interesting about it, you know.
I guess their pass rush has been pretty wild recently, but the coverage just, I think, Addison.
No, but I wonder if they'll take a page out of the Lions' book a little bit. The Lions did a lot of man blitzing against them last week in order to get the 1 seed, and it worked. And you might say, well, the Lions are a better coverage team right now. Their secondary is super banged up. For them to do that with the guys that they had out there, I think was really ballsy, and I think the Rams might want to try it.
Yeah.
Maybe not the whole game, but I think Sean McVay's looking at that. He's like, you know what?
That's risky, though, because Justin Jefferson still exists, and he could have had a much bigger game than he did.
He could have. We talked about that. There were a lot of plays where Darnold just, like, missed him by 2 feet.
Yeah. It's a tough call. I mean, I like the Rams front, and Darnold does hold the ball, and he's coming off such a bad game that maybe it just falls apart. I mean, I would have that worry if I was a Viking fan. Like, are we just a total paper tiger with Darnold? And, like, is this pass rush going to shred us? Like, that is in the back of my mind.
It's totally a viable thing. I mean, some of the, you know, when you said that, I forget what game we were talking about. You said that number where it's like Darnold had 7 pressures and 4 sacks. I mean, I don't know what his actual season pressure to sack percentage is.
There's a Packer game, I think.
Yeah, there definitely is some, like, truth to Darnold in a bad situation. Things can get ugly. I mean, I don't want to judge him based off of his worst game alone. And in that one, too, I will say this. Darnold was just, like, kept missing touchdowns. He kept just missing TDs. And part of that, not all of it, but part of that might have been maybe some extra hand fighting and some extra holding and a little bit of, you know, being real physical with Jefferson that then makes those passes look like they missed, not every time, but a couple of times, when in reality, it's like it was a well-placed throw if Jefferson was free a few times, but I don't know. If I told you, we've spent the entire season talking about the Rams and how, like, they're a feisty, sneaky, scrappy, I'd hate to see them in the playoffs team. Stafford is such a beast. He's like a tier 2 quarterback. He's been so good recently. McVay, all this stuff. If they could knock off someone serious. If I were to try to pick which someone serious team they would play to knock off, it would definitely be the Vikings. The Vikings are probably like the most vulnerable, serious team. That's what I think.
Yeah, if I'm going to pick an upset, it might be this one. The other thing that concerns me about the Vikings is they've abandoned the run a lot this year. Like, they've just straight up gone away from Aaron Jones. They have the second highest early down pass rate. And to some extent, that's not always the worst thing. I don't want to say that, like, throwing it to Justin Jefferson more as opposed to handing off is, like, a bad idea.
We criticized the Texans and the Patriots for their early down run rate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's not the most terrible thing. It's just more of a descriptor. But, like, both of these passing offenses are kind of similar. I mean, McVay and O'Connell, they have a similar approach. They have, like, some great receiving weapons. Like, it's not totally different. And I think the difference that the Rams have is they're a little bit more balanced. Or their quarterback, I trust a little bit more. McVay has been to so many NFC Championship games. Their front four just overall is better than what the Vikings have. I mean, the Vikings have the secondary players, though, and it is a big deal. I really don't know, but I do want to pick an upset. Or is this an upset? I guess I don't even know.
It's like a 1-point spread. It's basically a pick 'em.
Yeah, why is this even an upset? I guess just because the Rams' record is worse. I guess I'll go with the Rams.
I'm picking the Rams.
I'll go Vikings.
There you go, Matt. Be different.
It's close. I mean,
the defense for Minnesota is so much better than the Rams. I'm hemming over the D line and like maybe the pressure but overall, this Vikings defense is like maybe the corners are weak and that can get picked on here in the playoffs, and Flores can't hide it as well. That's kind of my concern. But overall, this defense is a lot better than LA's. And that scares me.
It's a very good defense. But again, we talk about against Stafford, against Nakua, Kupp, like Kyren.
They put up 30 last time.
They've got the guys, and they just went like band for band with Buffalo.
They did. They're like, I feel like they're like that team in March Madness that you see like when Syracuse is on the bracket. I'm just going to pick them to win their first game. Like, and they just kind of have that.
And they do.
And they do. Or like, what's another team like that? Like, I don't know.
No, I totally feel you on that, where it's like, yeah, the Rams.
And Minnesota's the total opposite, where like recently we saw them rank kind of low in DVOA and have an inflated record and lose. And that's not to the same extent at all what's happening this year, but that's still coming. This is kind of a March Madness vibes type pick for me with the Rams.
I do think it's funny the Vikings have 3 losses on this season, and it's who? The Rams, and then the Lions twice, which is the team that they would play in the second round. Or yeah, no, because it reseeds, doesn't it?
No, but they're still it would depend on if the Packers and
it reseeds. So yeah, the Packers, but it would be
Campbell told him see you next week last week.
Yeah.
And that was just such a disaster.
If that happens, then we know the league is rigged.
Very true.
So, yeah.
True. And Dan Campbell is pulling the strings. The Lions aren't actually good.
He's the new Belichick. He's the new evil emperor.
Uh-oh.
But moving on to Buccaneers and Commanders. Bucs are the 3 seed. Eked out the NFC South from the Atlanta Falcons. Just ripped it from their clutches at the last second. The Commanders, meanwhile, rookie quarterback, just like the Broncos. They've been super lethal with Jaden Daniels as a runner. Recently he's been their only source of rushing attack. And then they obviously have the threat of Terry McLaurin and what they can do in the deep passing game. And he's been one of the most accurate quarterbacks in football as a rookie. Very good chance he wins Offensive Rookie of the Year. I think I want to pick them. I think I want to pick the Commanders. Am I wrong for that?
I don't think you're wrong. I don't think you're wrong at all. There's some issues with the Bucs, since there's some nice things about the Commanders. There was a stretch this year where the Buccaneers defense was quite bad. They blitz a lot and they drop into zone coverage a lot. And like their linebackers were pretty major problems for a lot of this year. And that could kind of just be picked on. The pass rush, despite being complicated, maybe it wasn't the most difficult to beat. And in general, Bowles as a head coach, I think, makes some silly mistakes, like time management wise, timeouts wise. And then there's Baker to contend with, who, I've railed about here recently. But it's true. He's gotten a lot of negative plays. He's thrown a lot of picks. He's taken a good amount of sacks. Like, if you heat him up, and I'm sure Dan Quinn will heat him up.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he is not the best versus the blitz. So, like, there's that whole X's and O's things to contend with him being weak versus Dan Quinn's real strength. And with that, I can see the path for, a Bucs struggle session a little bit. I mean, what do you think? Why do you have them? I'm explaining it for you.
It is partially Baker. I wonder if they're gonna get like karma for like not just kneeing the ball. No, I do think Jaden Daniels has been playing very good football recently. And like the more that he has played, the more I've leaned towards him, like agreeing that he would be a the deserving candidate for Offensive Rookie of the Year. I just don't know, like almost, it's not nearly the level of Lamar, but it's almost Lamar-esque where he can just burn your defense in so many different ways right now with his accuracy throwing. And on top of the fact that like you don't have anyone in your defense who can really contain him. So if he just gets hot and starts playing really good football, I don't know if it comes down to like some sort of shootout between Baker and Jaden Daniels. And that's kind of how I think about a lot of these games is like in a shootout, come down to the wire. Who do I want? At this point, I would want Daniels. So
I can see that. I've got the Bucs here, I think. Bucky Irving. All right. Bucky Irving how many yards is he gonna drop, Matt, in his playoff debut?
Probably looking at, first quarter, he'll break one off. And then
second quarter, he'll catch a screen.
No, probably back in the first quarter, he breaks off another one. You're looking at a quick, we'll say like 130. And then
he's really breaking them.
Well, here's the issue is that then I'd probably say like, 170, but he's also like a motivate his defense type of guy. So it's probably going to be like a pretty lopsided game. And what happens when it's a lopsided game?
You run more.
You run the ball more. So I'd say probably about 300 yards.
300 yards. I'm concerned about that fate for the Washington Commanders. There's where's the stat that I wrote down? There's like kind of a major mismatch, I think, off the left side that I saw. Like running left, the Commanders rank 28th in yards allowed per game rushing, and they allow 5.8 yards per carry, which ranks 30th. And like, that's where Wirfs is. Like, that's where the best Buccaneers runs come, is like running outside left. And that's like what the Commanders are worst at this season. So like, I do think you can coax Baker into some mistakes, but we also saw in the last game, like he made those mistakes, like the pick, the miss to Evans, like some of the sacks, like he made some negative plays, but at the same time, he made more good ones over the course of it. And against the Commanders' defense, I just don't know if Marshawn Lattimore will really be the Mike Evans stopper. That has always kind of
That's also something I'm very, very worried about. I won't lie.
I wonder if they'll play more zone. They've played a lot more zone this year than you might think when you think Dan Quinn. They're not exactly a defense like last year where they're going to go into the playoffs playing a ton of man, and they just don't have that good of man players, and they get beat by the Packers. Like, they are playing a lot more zone this year. And I think it might serve them well than just like sticking Lattimore on the best player like they did against A.J. Brown, which didn't really work. So I don't know. The Commanders defense has been playing better as of late, but I still don't think they're going to stop this Bucs offense, which has been pretty much a buzzsaw for
It is
a long
worth
time.
noting the Buccaneers are top 3 in EPA in both offense and defense over the last 6 weeks of the season.
Yeah, they've been pretty elite this season, putting up a ton of points, and I think a really good defense could maybe put a stop to that.
That's how I look at the Buccaneers. They are one of those teams that can really get it going against anything other than the elite, but they do have some serious like limitations still. I believe that the Buccaneers have a more well-rounded offense. Their run game being a complete difference maker for them is a big deal. And while I think that Washington has a better quarterback, and I agree, Blaiden, that Daniels is the type of dude where he can really go out there and it can be hard to make a play against him sometimes. Baker has put up good performances this year, and I don't know if I'm betting everything on him just having like a disaster. And like you said, Theo, even when he gets off to a really bad start, which the start of the Saints game was brutal, they ended up recovering pretty well. So I favor the Buccaneers here a little bit more.
I think that's fair. But, I mean, if they get off to a rough start against, and what was it, Spencer Rattler?
Mm-hmm. That's true. But Rattler was kind of slinging the ball a little bit, man. Rattler was kind of slinging the ball, though.
Yeah. I think this is going to be a good game too. I mean,
I do too.
I have grown to trust Daniels. I do think that he's been playing
He's
very
good.
well recently. Like they played each other week 1 and the Bucs rolled, but the Commanders are just a completely different animal now, I think.
That's what I've said before. Like, I thought they were like scheming things well for Daniels early in the season, but I think right now Daniels is playing as good as any quarterback in the NFL. Well, maybe not anyone, but
I'm staring down my
most.
Yeah, I'm staring down my bracket, realizing I'm going to pick the higher seed in every single game.
Well, then we
Are
know
the Buccaneers at least an upset? No? Cool. All right, I'm picking every favorite in the first round.
Okay, okay, just in the first round. Okay, so
Just in the first round.
So then I assume we all have the Eagles. Theo, I know you want to pick the Packers.
If Watson was playing, I really would want to. I really would want to, but just I am very pessimistic with him out. I think the last 2 weeks, the impact on the explosive plays has been enormous. And when you look at the statistics, the Eagles and the Packers are really quite even in a lot of different categories. It surprised me. Like, their offenses really are not too different. There was a spell this season where the passing offense for the Eagles really, really struggled and weighed them down a little bit. And then there was a point where A.J. Brown was out as well, which kind of adds to that. But, I mean, you really have to squint to see how the Packers even draw even, really. And I think with Watson out, it's not going to be explosive enough. And the Eagles' defense is 100% more legit than what the Packers is.
Yeah.
I very much believe that. Just the pass rush with Jalen Carter versus anybody the Packers have is completely different. Nolan Smith has been turning it on as well. The Packers had some games where they got sacks, and I like what Hafley's done this year. But when rubber meets the road, is anybody on this team going to beat Lane Johnson? Is anybody on this team going to beat Jordan Mailata? Are they going to hold up versus Saquon Barkley for 4 quarters? They had some nice moments versus the Eagles in week 1. They picked off Jalen Hurts. They covered a bunch of fumbles, but they also gave up a ton of big plays. And AJ Brown,
was such a wonky game, though. That was week 1 and a weird one.
Yeah, that game was back and forth. The Packers kept it close again. If Watson was in this, I do think it could go even, because I think the Eagles have struggled with their passing offense in some areas, but without him, I think the Packers are going to struggle more. And I don't really think like the Eagles have to struggle at all. I'm saying that the Eagles will struggle. Like I don't.
Well, and I think it's interesting. Both Hurts and Love are returning from injuries this week, or like recovering from injuries. And the notes on their first, I don't know if it was Packers' first or Love's first day back at practice, but it was Hurts' first day back at practice, and he said. Or the headline is Jalen Hurts is sharp in return to practice, though limited. And Packers Love still has a sore elbow, but he's getting back to normal.
It could be an ugly, weird, low-scoring one that the Packers are never quite out of, and it makes me want to rip my hair out. That's the average Packers loss, is like they're never quite out of it. It's very rare that you see them get blown out. But do they ever overcome adversity and win in the end? Since 2010, no. They always lose. So I think this one might look like that, where like it's a close L. It comes down to that.
That's fair. So we'll all take the Eagles there, and then
I mean, yeah, I think a game like I that the Packers would win, because the Eagles' defense has just been amazing. Down the stretch, really, and the way that they've bounced back from where they were last year is super impressive. It just does hurt that your big deep weapon is out and your quarterback has an elbow issue. It's not to say that it can't happen, it just lowers the odds. I feel like in a game where the quarterbacks are both limited, granted the Packers can get it done there too, but I like the Eagles a little bit more.
I feel like for them to win, it'll just have to be on the back of Josh Jacobs. He's the best player on our offense, like by far. He breaks so many tackles. He can catch. He's such a beast. And if they just remember when Derrick Henry beat Lamar Jackson in the playoffs? If you I think it's got to look like that, where he stiff arms somebody and it's just a comically good running back game. And then Jalen Hurts just struggles for whatever reason. I want to see just a Josh Jacobs save us game. I'd like if something else could work, but I just don't think that it will. I think that's our best shot.
Fair enough. So the NFC bracket then. Who do you guys have winning in your divisional games, or who are your divisional matchups, and how did you have those playing out?
Oh, Detroit and Philly.
Yeah, I got Detroit and Philly in the NFC Championship game.
So we all had the same championship matchup.
Yes.
And then it comes down to Lions, Eagles. The Lions are so incredibly injured right now.
They are.
Their defense is working off of scraps. They keep getting it done regardless. Their run game is just phenomenal. And an injury like Montgomery being out is brutal, but when it's just Gibbs getting more looks because of it, dude, it's not the end of the world at all. I also picked the Lions to make the Super Bowl preseason. And I
Packers,
do believe
Chiefs,
that...
Or Lions Chiefs was your pick, wasn't it? Both 1 seeds?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we take that.
We do take that.
There you go.
But I also do worry about... The only thing that scares me with the Eagles is the limitations of Hurts, But those have not been nearly as bad recently. And outside of that, this team is firing on every single cylinder imaginable. I want to pick the Lions to stay with my preseason pick, but I would only be doing it to stay with my preseason pick. I'm going to say that
your heart says Eagles.
Yeah, I'm going to say that the Eagles get it done, unfortunately. And make the playoffs.
Good man.
I also go with Eagles. And my hang up is the defense of the Lions. I don't really have many concerns about this offense translating to the playoffs, even with Goff.
Even if Goff is mid, they can survive it. That I 100% believe.
I 100%
more than any other
that
team
as well.
They can survive their quarterback playing a mid game. Yes.
Last year, I thought Goff had a pretty decent run. Maybe he didn't make any spectacular plays, and this has been the case with Goff in the regular season as well. But the Lions passing offense was good last playoff run in all 3 games, really. There were drops by Josh Reynolds. There was a fumble by Jahmyr Gibbs. There was a 4th down conversion that they didn't get, which was also a drop by Reynolds. So that's double counted. And they almost certainly, I think, if those very unfortunate things did not happen, would have beaten the 49ers. The offense and like I said, Goff didn't have to play at a superhuman level for that to be the case. So I think they're going to be fine on that side of the ball. The defense, they play a lot of man. They play the most man in the league. The last year, the Cowboys and Cleveland played a lot of man. And as soon as they got to the playoffs, they got torched by Nico Collins. They got torched by Jordan Love. Playing that much man coverage with those corners just isn't a guaranteed recipe for success at all versus what the Eagles do, I think. It's risky. It's rolling the dice. You're hoping the quarterback misses, and Darnold did. And they've generated a lot of negative plays. I think there might be something to be said for Aaron Glenn being better at coaching man coverage maybe than other people, communicating motions, working over picks and things like that, and rub routes, passing things off downfield. The Lions are very impressive at that, and they're more nuanced than your average just line up and run around and play man thing. And they have to be, because they don't have Myles Garrett or Aiden Hutchinson or anybody like that, or who else plays man a lot? Micah Parsons, right? So they have to be better on the back end because they don't have Micah Parsons, Aiden Hutchinson, like I just said. But still, that much man coverage versus A.J. Brown, that is
And Devonta
why,
Smith.
and Devontae Smith. That is why I feel like the Eagles might slice through them, and the Eagles defense might be just a little bit more legit against what the Lions can do.
I think the Eagles, I think you look at the Eagles defense and you have to think it's a lot more legit. As it stands right now, I mean, they're not missing their best player. I totally agree about the man coverage, like being able to sink them. I mean, those are horrific mismatches.
Yeah.
Smith and Brown. And on top of that, like even if you felt like that was going to hold up, the pass rush at any moment could put up, a hamburger, right? I mean, Za'Darius Smith has been keeping this thing together. Give him credit. But what happens when it's, the Eagles, right? What happens when the Eagles offensive line has a good game? I just feel like they don't have a lot of matchup advantages there. And while I think that the Lions are, you could say the same thing, like they have some great pieces that are going to be tough for the Eagles to deal with. It feels like that's much more of a clash of titans on that side of the ball rather than with Detroit's defense. I feel like you're really kind of hoping for a Hurts stinker. And that's the path because Hurts stinkers seem to affect Philadelphia much more than Goff stinkers affect Detroit, right?
Yeah.
But
I don't think I've ever seen Philadelphia throw 5 picks and win.
Right. So we'll see. And the Lions defense has been all things considered, the Lions defense has been very good with the injuries that they've had.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
It's been ridiculous that they've been able to keep this thing together at all. I mean, most teams, I'll say this. I was mad last offseason when people kept talking about the Lions like, oh, well, they're just going to get injured next year and they won't be back because it's just going to even out, right? Like, that's just how it works. And it's like, well, you don't know that. Just because it was black the last 3 times doesn't mean it's going to be red this time, right? But honestly, 100%. Like the world where the Lions are super injured has come to pass. Like that is what has happened, actually. It did balance out. It is red this time. And they're the 1 seed anyway. It's crazy. It's crazy they've been able to pull this thing off, honestly. But there's so many times where something is true in the regular season, and then you get to the playoffs and you get into the big game where everybody knows everything at this point, and it's
a mismatch is a mismatch, and I've got to call it like I see it. And I just feel like with the man coverage heavy teams I've seen in the playoffs before, that's the way it's gone. I think that this Lions offense is better than the Eagles one this year. I really do. But I think that there is a gap between what on the other side of the ball that is bigger than the gap on the offensive side of the ball. Maybe special teams is some sort of hidden gem. I haven't really looked at that, but I think the Eagles would win. But I think that would be a great game. I don't think it would look exactly like Cowboys Packers, which was kind of a blowout, or what was the other one? Browns Texans. Yeah, I don't think it'll be like that level of. But it could be. I mean, why not? I guess I wouldn't have expected those to be major blowouts.
I imagine the Lions will come into this game and they will play it the same way they played the Vikings
because the Lions' offense is so much. Yeah, I agree. The Lions' offense is so much better than like the Cowboys, who are always sort of stoppable, even though they had like good pieces there, or the Browns' offense with Joe Flacco. We can't compare this Lions offense to that Browns team. So I don't think they're as prone to getting blown out as those two were. But I totally see where you're coming from, where it sort of just can't actually get it done.
It could look like maybe some other Lions games have looked this year, like versus the Bills, where early on their defense is getting killed, right? Allen is run through the man coverage. It's ugly. And then the offense like keeps them in it and puts up points even though they're down, but it can't overcome just that's the kind of game I've seen them play this year, and that's what I'm scared of versus an offense like Philadelphia. I fear the Bills game might be how that game looks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but who knows?
I think the Eagles are the most complete team in the sport right now, outside of maybe Baltimore. But I like Philly.
I would say the Eagles are more. I mean, okay, complete. Do we want to get into the semantics of that? I agree with you. I think it's I think it's Eagles though, because what separates like the Ravens from the Eagles is like quarterback. Like Lamar is a lot better than Hurts, but if we consider that they have a QB, it's not like the Eagles are without. It's hard to find what their huge weaknesses are. I mean, they've got stars at all levels. Their secondary is great. They have Bond. They've got great defensive linemen. Their offensive line is great. They've got top tier weapons. I mean, that's and not at one position, but they've got the tight end. They got the receivers. They got the running back. I think they are the most complete team. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they'll win the Super Bowl, but they're the most complete team.
Have we talked about this? Do they have a weakness? Maybe safety?
I think I don't know. Like not really safety. Not really running the ball. I mean, running too high as much as they do, you could say like, hey, you could run on them maybe. If you had a really good wide receiver one, like, oh, Mitchell and Slay on the boundary, like maybe you could get, you have a better wide receiver than those two. On offense, like Hurts has struggled to get the ball out very fast at points this year. So like maybe you could say Hurts, but it's kind of hard to say Hurts because he's still an above average quarterback and has been a fine playoff performer in the past. Wide receiver 3,
good.
Their wide receiver depth. It's their wide receiver depth and the fact that Hurts does have some limitations, like over the middle of the field. Sometimes
I think
those
their
are
line,
their two things.
I think their line is an overwhelming positive, obviously, but I think sometimes in their run blocking, they do have some weaknesses. Like the tight ends can't really block. And that is something that's gotten them in trouble this year, where like maybe they're like, that's still a position that's losing. That's still leakage. And Saquon has been tackled by guys who get by the tight end a lot this year. And I think,
who can block though? They're receivers.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But I think along their line, Saquon hasn't always had, like, there are spells over the course of the game where there's not like massive movement or anything like that. But Mulata's been hurt a lot of the year. Like if he's healthy, and Lane Johnson, and there's no Fred Johnson out there. They're a lot better.
To my knowledge, they are healthy once Hurts is 100%. So
yeah, and Hurts is not 100%. He's had a couple concussions this year. It feels like, or head injuries, big head hits. That's also
he was limited today in practice, but they say he looks sharp. So we'll see kind of what tomorrow brings. But I imagine he will play, and then by hopefully when they're in the NFC Championship game, he is like fully 100% at that point. But
their kicker Jake Elliott is also 30th in field goal percentage, just above Young Ho Koo, Justin Tucker, and Evan McPherson, some famous chokers from this year.
And they have a Duke kicker. I mean.
And Bates is
really
at 90%. Bates is at 90%. So if it came down to a field goal, I'd trust the Lions.
That's true.
Make it.
That's true. And that's a third of the game.
That is a third of the game. Is that?
It is a third of the game. Just field goals, not punting or just. So who do you guys have winning the Super Bowl then? Theo, you have Ravens Eagles matching up?
Yeah, I do. I'll take the Ravens, but geez. Yeah, I'll take the Ravens.
Matt, you have Chiefs Lions matching up?
I have Chiefs Eagles.
Okay. Oh yeah, that's right. You did end up picking the Eagles. Chiefs Eagles, who are you going to take?
Who are you taking?
I have Eagles Ravens, and I'm going to take the Eagles.
It is such a tough one between the Chiefs and the Eagles.
I want to see Jalen get one. I need it. I need it, man.
The gap there and how much I trust the sort of late game cube. I don't know. Like I really don't distrust Hurts this much. It's been
last
good.
Time Hurts
recently.
was in the Super Bowl. He had 4 touchdowns, man. Like
he balled out. It's just here's what's killing me. I want to pick the Eagles. On paper, it's the Eagles. The issue is that I did this whole thing last year where I was like, just because the Chiefs blah, 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 doesn't mean that they're going to do it again. And then they just did it again.
Yeah.
Like easily. Like they just did their thing and it went to overtime. And of course, like they just get it done. And then they've been doing like that even more this year. So it's like doubling down on that. But you know what? Like, screw it. I'll go with the Eagles. Why not?
Let's go. This rocks.
That's a tough one, man. I think you look at it, there's at least, I feel like there's more real, true, like crazy top tier contenders this year than most seasons, right? Because the Chiefs are up there, obviously. The Eagles are up there. I'd say the Lions are still there.
I mean, everybody's better than they were last year. The Chiefs are better than they were. The Lions are better than they
Bills,
were.
Ravens,
the Bills
like
are better than they were. The Ravens are better than they were. Who were the wild cards last year? Like, I don't know. The Commander, like the Bucs are pretty good. Like the Bucs made the playoffs last year, did they not? They're better than they were. The Rams, did they make it? They're not. I mean, they're pretty typical. The Packers, Commanders, and Rams might be pretty typical. But the Packers won, 12 games, and they're an NFC 7 seed? Or did they win 11?
It's a good year. Like, the good teams are really good. Yeah. I mean, see, I'm typing in 20.
Would you like to hear Jalen Hurts' career stats in the playoffs? It's 1,200 total yards, 10 total touchdowns, only 3 turnovers.
Yeah, he's
turnovers
not
or
playoff.
interceptions?
It's turnovers.
Okay,
two picks and then the fumble in the Super Bowl.
The fumble was bizarre. That's such a weird one to reckon with when you think about
that happened again this year. I don't remember against who, but I saw that early. I was like, that's the exact. I think I was watching. Micah Parsons because I was watching. I was watching Abdul Carter, and I keep hearing that he's like a Micah Parsons clone, which I don't think I agree, but I was watching to like compare like how they
100%.
their pass rush paths and whatnot. And there was a play against Jalen Hurts where he had like the exact same fumble as he did against the Chiefs.
Okay. Do you want to run through last year's playoff teams real quick?
Okay.
Yeah.
It was the super young, not really supposed to be there, but like good Texans. Completely phony Browns. No hate. It was the Chiefs, who at the time looked as uninspiring as they had in a while. Ended up working out, but at the time they didn't. They were like the 3 seed. It was Miami, who had like completely started collapsing. Then it was Buffalo, who was looking pretty good, but I don't think anybody considered them maybe the best version of themselves.
They were going in somewhat injured. Do I remember right? Like they had a lot of defensive injuries that whole season.
Then it was Pittsburgh. Typical. It was Tampa, who was solid, but like the 4 seed, you know. It was a Philadelphia team that was missing the mark. It was a good Detroit team, but probably not considered like a crazy contender going in because their defense was like, you know, a pretty big, not elite unit. Then it was the Rams, who were themselves, you know, feisty, but probably not a super crazy contender. Then it was Dallas, who was totally phony. And it was the Packers, who were like a strong 7 seed, but like a true
2 seed.
7 seed at that point. Yeah, and beat the 2 seed.
Which just goes to show.
And then the Ravens and the 49ers, who were both really, really good going into that. But even and even the 49ers probably weren't as good as you felt they were. No, they were. Yeah. So it was not, I wouldn't say there's 5 contenders going into it at the time who were as good as they are now, for sure.
Yeah, this year's way better across the board. Wild card and division winners.
Yeah, I'm super excited. All right. Well, those are our NFL 2024-2025 playoff predictions. Fellas, any parting notes before we get out? All right. Let's watch some kick-ass football then, man. Got college football playoffs, we got NFL playoffs, and we will be back to record Sunday night. You'll have your recap Monday morning. Should be a fun one. Thank you all so much for tuning in to another episode of Stay Hot. And from your 3 favorite fellas here, sorry, I just bumped my mic. We will catch you on the flippity flop.